Hello and welcome to Who Corner to Corner. My name's Geoff and his name is...
It's Paul, yes. It hasn't changed for the last years.
Yes, 3 years. 3 years of podcasting, yeah. So today we're going to look at... Well, I don't really know what we're going to call this one at the moment.
We'll think of a title before it goes out.
But it's the... What do we and other people
the current
state of Doctor Who and the future?
That sounds like one of those bang, bang, bang head thumbnails that you see on YouTube. You know, we're going to go with that. Should we go with that? Let's do that. The current state of Doctor Who. We'll put loads of explosive pop-outs.
Big eyes. And,
big colours and stuff like that. And question marks. I know question marks and exclamation marks, they always tend to do well, don't they?
Yeah, they do, yeah. So that's what we're going to talk about, because the show is going to be back soon for Series 2, 41,
Series
whatever.
2, Season 2? I don't know.
Season 2, something like that.
Lost track of it.
With Shooty. And there's a lot of conversation about has the show been renewed for Series 3 with Disney. A bit of a panic because Bad Wolf Studios are offering their space up for usage from people. And although that doesn't mean that Doctor Who's not coming back. But no decision.
They're making money out of some fallow times.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
just rent it out. If it's not been used, rent it out. Get the money in.
Yeah. So that doesn't really mean anything. And apparently no decision will be made on Series 3 until Series 2 has aired. And I've seen people just today talking about the show needs a rest and another wilderness years to somehow get people excited again about it.
I'll never understand that mentality. I'm sorry, man. I know we'll probably talk a bit about this when it comes on, but let me just put it out there. If you're a fan of something, why the hell do you want it rested, right? Yeah. I remember back in the 90s when Doctor Who was forced to rest, and I hated that. You know, I hated that whole thing of not being with Doctor Who, even if it was what I might have thought was really crap Doctor Who. I would still rather have that than zero Doctor Who. Let's just put that out there right now. If that's what you think, that's up to you. But I personally think if that's your attitude, crazy, man.
Yeah, I don't
put
see...
that out on the YouTube.
Yeah.
On the YouTube thumbnail. You're crazy, man. What's wrong with you?
I don't think resting it is going to make people go, oh, I'm so eager for Doctor Who to come back. I know. If they're not watching it now, they're not going to watch it in 5 years' time.
What is that thing when it comes back? What is that? What was this?
Exactly.
Some old show from 2025 or whatever. Gosh, what? Oh, that's weird.
And the audience will have moved on again, and it's a stupid
idea. The thing that makes me laugh, though, is that I'm sorry if I'm offending you. If you're one of these people, that's fine, right? Take it on the chin, right? But you call yourself fans, right, by saying this. I'm a fan of Doctor Who, but I'd rather there was actually no Doctor Who on the telly or whatever. Maybe you're a fan of the spin-off media, which is fine. I get that. Yeah. Maybe you prefer the Big Finish and the books and everything else, and the TV series. It's fine. It can take a rest or whatever. I can get that. But to not actually physically, mentally want Doctor Who on the telly when you're a Doctor Who fan, man, that's crazy.
Yeah,
don't get it. Really don't get it. Yeah. Explain it to me in the comments in words that I can understand.
Yeah,
there you go.
If you think that it should take a rest, let us know why. Why do you think that? So
or not,
or
not. I don't care, actually.
So, what's your how do you feel about things at the moment? We've had quite a few comments on this. Strangely enough, lots on
I
Twitter.
I haven't seen them, actually.
Not many on Blue Sky, which is a bit odd.
Okay. I've just loaded up Blue Sky.
Do
we have some on Facebook as well?
Maybe. I'm not sure if we asked this.
Anyway, what are my thoughts on it?
Yeah.
What on what? On where Doctor Who is now? Or
the current state of it, the future.
I worry about this word, the state of it. You know, it's like it sort of calls to mind something that has been bedraggled or somehow abused. Look at the state of that just walked in. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. But Doctor Who's always been at its best when it's continued to evolve. Yeah. When it's when we moved from the first Doctor to the second Doctor, when we moved from black and white to colour, when we had Time Lords and then we had a Gallifrey, and then we had all kinds of things and new enemies and all sorts of stuff. Doctor Who has always moved forward. It's always evolved with the current times and always tried to actually push things ahead with new writers, new producers, directors, new talent in front of and behind the camera. And I think that is when Doctor Who's at its strongest, when it continues to do that. So what I think has happened in recent years is that Doctor Who has actually taken a step backwards. You know, it's kind of it's taken a step back to, well, obviously it's all been handed back to Russell T Davies, isn't it? You know, It's like the old team, the old gang. So Russell T is main showrunner. We got Phil Collinson as his buddy. I think everyone else is there. Murray Gold as well. So we got something that is trying to recreate this kind of golden age of when Doctor Who was reintroduced to the world, and it picked up a load more fans and a lot of buzz, and it was suddenly popular again. But we don't have that. We have a Doctor Who which has one foot in that nostalgic kind of rosy glow, but we also have this kind of pressure to move it on. So, and I think the two things don't quite join up. I think that's what it is. I think Russell T, in trying to hold on to all those wonderful things that made it popular in 2004-5, is struggling to find a concrete vision for where the show creatively needs to go. I think what the last series has done is actually try and pick up some threads from the Chris Chibnall era. You know, we got a continuation of the Doctor's adoption story.
Yeah,
we've got references to the Flux and all the things that Jodie went through, and that's nice in a way, but it hasn't really done anything with them other than mention them. And that's not really a strong enough kind of link. It's not a strong enough glue. And I think in pushing things forward, what they tried to do this year, which I do applaud, is kind of be a little bit more fantastical with their storylines, a little bit more kind of anything goes. Let's tear up the rule book. Let's literally invent science that laughs at science. It kind of offends me to one respect, but I absolutely love that they're doing it. I don't think it's probably worked, or at least not for me, but I know from looking on socials, there's a lot of people who are engaging with that, and a lot of people love it. And I think as long as people do love it, that's always a good thing. So regardless of what the likes of you and I, and maybe a few of our listeners might think, if they're not happy with the current state of the show, I'm pleased that it's still going on. I'm pleased that it's trying to push ahead with something new. What I'm not necessarily pleased about is the fact that it's still trying to hold on to that kind of, version of Doctor Who that we had in 2005-6, when Russell T was at the helm the first time round. So there you go. That's my feelings in a nutshell right now. What about you, Mr. Geoff?
No, this is you in a nutshell. Help! I'm trapped in a nutshell.
Oh, again, this nutshell. Let me out! Let me out!
Yeah, I feel similar. I mean, anyone who's listened to us before will know that I have been unable to move on from the 13th Doctor era.
He really has. This has
really
been tough
have.
for him.
I mean,
I'm not going to lie.
Look, let's be honest. When something hits absolute peak, God level, whatever you want to call it, it's really hard to go back from that.
Doctor Who's never been the same since the Caves of Androzani, mate, frankly.
Well, that's your God level,
But we've all got our own little pinnacles, haven't we? That's the thing. So,
and
we
I
have to be
think
respectful of others.
Yeah. So I will say, what I think and feel, is my thing, but it's irrelevant. If you or anyone thinks the same, cool. If you don't, fine. But whilst like you said, the mavity is what I assume you were alluding to. This nonsense science thing.
That and other things.
Yeah, like salt at the end of the universe.
But I like that. I like that.
Garbage.
It's purely personal, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. And if it works for you or you listening or whoever, absolutely brilliant. So for me, I felt that. Bringing it back to Russell T and then Tennant and Tate was, on one hand, it's saying, this is the Doctor Who you love. This is Doctor Who at its best, because there were some people, and again, that's their call, who only like Doctor Who in that form. And I felt that going back like that was not necessarily a good thing. I think that the 60th was pointless, because all they did was celebrated Tennant and Tate and Russell the T.
Yeah.
But I say that, Star Beast was fun. My kids liked it. While Blue Yonder was really good, if not a bit mad as a middle of 3 episodes. It would have been superb in a 10 episode thing.
Yeah.
And The Giggle was good, but I've not rewatched any of them because it just didn't connect with me in the same way. And I do have an issue with the fact that Tennant is sort of the face of it all, and I understand he's really popular in marketing and blah blah blah, but we got other great doctors, and he will be told you're wrong, but he overshadowed things a lot during 13's era, and seeing 2 Tennants on the Doctor timeline now, like it's just a bit silly, really, for me. But Shooty came along, and I was excited for that, and I thought, let's see what he delivers. And I've said before, he's always brilliant, and Millie Ruby really good as well. But overall, with the series, I felt I felt disappointed. I don't think it was never going to achieve the sort of 2005, 6 to 9 years. It couldn't. It wasn't going to do it. Russell wants to do something different, and to his credit, he did. But things just didn't work for me. And is that because I'm, emotionally attached to 13 and can't move on? Maybe.
It might be part of it.
I'm not denying it, but there were definitely things with it that are, let's be honest, absolute rubbish. Pointing at the sign.
Oh my goodness.
That's objectively rubbish, that is.
Yeah. So that's something. But, I watched Space Babies with my kids, and they really liked it, one of my twins particularly. So, I've said this before as well, I have to try to remember it's not always about me or you listening. There's other people. Are they trying to aim for an audience that is not interested, is watching different things, it has no idea what Doctor Who is? Maybe. I saw someone, I think it was William Who, shared something online recently that someone watched Series 1 and they were like, what is this show? It's all over the place.
Kind of is.
And it kind of is a little bit, it's just throwing it all at the wall and sticking, or seeing what sticks. I'm not sure that I'd like to think the show won't be cancelled. I don't think that will happen. I'm very looking forward to Series 2. They just announced the writers today, Juno Dawson, Pete McTeague. That's very exciting. I've seen some bits from the filming for the next series, the trailer. It looks really good. So I'm hopeful that, maybe this first series not really working for me was, I don't know, maybe it was because it largely came from Russell and that doesn't sort of fully work to all come from one person on it. Or maybe it was just,
I don't know. I mean,
the ideas just didn't flow for me. Could have been that.
What were? Let's focus on a little bit of the positive stuff then. So from the moment Shooty took over at the end of The Giggle to now, what have been your highlights then? Let's try and turn it that way just for a few minutes, if we can. There's a long silence here. We can edit this out in post.
Well, I like his outfit.
Oh, good Lord, it's not going to go well, is it?
The character options toy was fantastic. I think he's.
You think he's good, right?
He's great. There's maybe there's this debate about the crying. That doesn't really bother me overall. I don't think it's often earned particularly, but and the fact that happens so much, I kind of can't really get behind it and sort of feel for it. But he's brilliant. He's cheeky. He's got a lot of energy.
Friendly.
He's friendly. He's lively. All of that.
Very friendly Doctor.
Yeah,
must be everybody's best friend, I think.
Yeah, and I haven't sort of connected the way I did with 13, but I like him. I like Ruby. I think she was good. They were a really nice pairing. It would have been nice to be able to explore it a bit more. It's a shame he wasn't present for nearly 2 episodes in the series, which was a short enough series as it was. But I like Space Babies. it was good. It was fun. Talking babies, weird. Talking pets, weird. I don't particularly like that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Devil's Cord had some great stuff in it, but also had some silly stuff in it. Boom was high concept, dragged out across an entire episode.
Made a good short story.
It would have done, yeah. Dot and Bubble was really good. 73 yards started really nicely when it was spooky, then just turned into, boredom. What was the Sutek one when he first reappeared? That was excellent.
The Legend of Ruby Sunday.
Yes, that was brilliant. And then Empire of Death occurred.
They missed out Rogue. What about Rogue?
Oh, Rogue. Yeah. I mean, it was fine. It was trying to sort of harken back to, classic RTD with the sort of, anthropomorphized aliens, He
didn't write that episode.
No, but he obviously would have kind of, developed the idea and whatnot, and it was fine. I didn't like Rogue particularly. I thought he was a bit kind of moody and grumpy, and I was like, why has the Doctor got the hops for him? I don't get it. But anyway, he didn't
so
feel...
tight pants.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Anyway.
So, every week I went into it thinking, this one sounds good, and kind of, I don't know, it's really hard to explain. I felt disappointed for the first time in ever.
Really? I mean, that's quite strong, isn't it? So, I mean, with that in mind, then, do you think that you could be one of these people who thinks, do you know what? Maybe they do need to rest the show.
No, I think that's
then.
nonsense. I think because
even despite the fact that you were really not switched on to season one,
because it's just because I didn't like it particularly. As long as people are watching and liking it, then that's what matters. And it's totally like you said, as long as the viewing is there and all of that, I'd rather have Who and hope that I could watch it and go, hey, I really like that one, than not at all. And also at the end of the day, we've got the 13 adventure starting at Big Finish, so I'm sorted.
Well, there you are. So you're okay. But so I mean, the other thing as well, it was just occurs to me as you were saying there is, think of all the new fans. Okay, so some people watching it would look at it and think, what the bloody hell's this nonsense then? And that has been the same throughout all of Doctor Who. I'm sure every year, somebody who's never seen it before. Do you grab that?
No, it's just fine.
Okay. Let's wait till that's gone because it'll just be on the audio track.
To remember that, I'll just wave so we know that's to be cut.
Hold on, let me finish that bit because that's right. What was I saying? So all throughout all of Doctor Who, I'm pretty sure every year that it's come back a new season, somebody's watched it for the first time and gone, what is this? I don't get it. Nonsense. But I think equally, there's always been a bunch of people who watched it for the first time and thought, oh my goodness, I love this. What is it? It's weird, it's spooky, it's quirky, it's exciting, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
There's always new fans coming in year after year. So the question is then, well, who are we as old, wizened fans who've been at it since day whatever? Whether our first experience was 2005 or 1963 or, somewhere in between 2013 or whatever. Who are we to suddenly decide that, we know what is best for Doctor Who. So let's take it away from all these new people who are just jumping on for the first time.
And we can't, because the show can't. It cannot continue to be made for a set small audience because there's no growth in there. That is what will kill it.
And that's part of the evolution of Doctor Who, isn't it? Continually moving. And, there are going to be some moments in there, a whole bunch of stories that you're not going to love. Equally, it'll turn around and there'll be a whole bunch that you will love. For me, it was like, when Doctor Who came back in the 21st century, because I wasn't ready to leave it in 1989. I wanted more because it felt like it was just getting good again. With those last stories of Sylvester McCoy's era, it was just so in tune with what I wanted to see from Doctor Who. And then it was taken away from people who didn't understand it, who would just look at it and say, this needs to be rested, or we need to put the money somewhere else. And then it came back with Paul McGann, and there was a promise, or, the kind of hidden promise of, what if this goes to series? And then you look at that show with this big production values, this big, beautiful gothic TARDIS, and okay, so it moved on. It was a different kind of story than we had from the old series. And then when it came back in 2005, it's like, oh my goodness, it's different again, and okay, it wasn't, I didn't really get into Russell T's first, sort of incarnation of Doctor. I loved Christopher Eccleston. I thought he was brilliant and Billy Piper was a revelation, but I didn't gel with all the stories. I thought some of them were a little bit weak. I thought some of them were kind of different to what I thought Doctor Who might be. But I stayed with it because it's still new Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And how we got Tennant, and he was great. And then there was a sort of overconfidence with some of the stories. But just when I was getting a bit cheesed off with all that, along comes Stephen Moffat. It changes again. We get a new Doctor, a new dynamic, a new flavour for the stories. Then we get the 12th. Then we get 13th. And
that's the
throughout
thing.
all of that run, I've kind of it's been up and downs in terms of my own sort of feelings towards it.
And
but I always want new Doctor Who every time.
And it's a show like no other. And, Chris Chibnall said to us, it's sort of like each era is like how did he describe a volume?
He said it as a volume, because I said, I really don't like this word era, Chris.
Yeah.
It's kind of overused, you know what I mean? And he says, don't worry, Paul, I get that, mate. I get it. It's fine, we'll call it a volume.
Yeah.
So we did. We agreed.
I forgot I need to tell you about an email that came in earlier.
Oh, it's exciting.
He's right, because, you might think, oh, yeah, I really love Sixth Doctor, but, 7 didn't really quite gel for me.
Yeah, 7
so that's what
didn't
you
for a lot of
like,
people,
and I think, if you're a Doctor Who fan, you're a Doctor Who fan. And, I saw a poll over the weekend, should the Chibnall era be erased from existence? And excuse me, but
why are you seeing these things, Geoff?
I don't know, it just popped up, and the vote was no,
dear.
do not erase it. That was the winning comment.
Good job.
I said this
people
didn't
triggering you just for engagement.
I
Don't
said this
rise to it.
This didn't really go the way you anticipated, did it? But I wasn't in love with the shoot here. I don't think it should be erased. Absolute nonsense. You can't act like, well, I didn't like that, so therefore, it should be erased. It doesn't work like that. So
no, exactly.
Yeah. Whilst I may not be, is in love with this iteration of the show, it's still Doctor Who, and I'll still watch it.
Doctor Who,
and I've got all the stuff I do love, from before, and I will rewatch it at some point. But I'm excited for the next series.
Always
which I hope
excited.
will blow my socks off. That's
Indeed.
my hope for it. So we've got a few comments from people. Do we have a voice note from?
Where did that come
it?
from? Yeah, hold on. I've got to upload it.
Okay, I'll read some quotes whilst you do that.
Right.
Right. Benoit Blanc enjoyer. Benoit Blanc, which is, I believe, a Knives Out reference. Initially, I wasn't a huge fan, but after a rewatch, I absolutely adore it, aside from one scene in Empire of Death. And I said... I
saw this. You
what
pinned
scene
them
is
down on
that?
it, didn't you? Yeah.
Kind of knowing what it would be. The reveal of Ruby's mother and the explanation. Do not like that at all, but luckily it doesn't impact my opinion of the season as a whole, unlike others. And I said, oh yes, that scene. So, I've alluded to that, mentioned it briefly earlier. It didn't work for me at all. I think if, Legend of Ruby Sunday, I think I came on when we reviewed it, and I said, that was cracking. That was a great finale. Cliffhanger. But, the payoff was a total flop for me. And,
I didn't like Ruby Sunday, that episode much at all. I can't remember did I say that at the time? I remember now.
I think you did, and I was.
It's difficult because I did actually watch it all again quite recently.
Yes, I know.
And I've just loaded up some of my thoughts to kind of remind myself what I thought of it second time round. But we might come back to that.
Yeah, I haven't done that yet. And then Vince Bishop says, looking forward, as ever, you guys bring it on and present it so well, being informative, fun and interesting. Thanks, Vince. Generally, you're too kind, and I did accidentally on purpose read that out there.
Did you give him the envelope of good stuff?
Yeah, checks in the mail, yeah.
Lovely.
And then, let's go, Yvette Stevens says, if I leave a voice note, I will end up swearing a lot, and that's rude.
I saw that one as well.
So I'll just do it once. It was shit.
Yikes.
Oscar Groucho says, an interesting debut season handcuffed by circumstances beyond the show's control.
That's a fair point.
The unavailability of the lead led to the two strongest episodes of the run, defining the character by that absence. 73 Yards was an Allan Poe short story retooled as a Decalogue novella. I have no idea what that means.
Decalogue was the short story collection that was started, I think, by Virgin Publishing. They used to have little short stories that sort of somehow complement the Virgin New Adventures and Missing Adventures.
Yeah, I know what
nothing to do with them whatsoever. And then I think Big Finish took it on when Virgin collapsed. So there you go. That's what that is, Geoff.
Right, thank you. That's an interesting point about, handcuffed beyond circumstances, beyond the show. Well, maybe they should have waited until Shooty was fully available, but, whatever. And then Oscar says, Dot and Bubble, a searing reflection on the tech-obsessed narcissistic face of contemporary society. The iconography was memorable, yet the finale suffered from Simpsons syndrome of having cool things happen just because. A curate's egg, but no less engrossing. 2 episodes I will revisit. Eric White says, I really enjoyed The Legend of Ruby Sunday. What I saw of Dot and Bubble was good, but I would recommend watching the rest of it, Eric. It was excellent. 73 Yards was decent, struggled badly with the rest. That is sort of my view there. Giltster says, I loved his debut season. Whilst I wasn't a fan of Space Babies, everything was good/great. I'm a little worried for the future, but I hope Disney keeps distributing the series instead of HBO Prime. Rob the Rubbish Time Lord says there were some good performances, but the writing let them down at times as it took me ages to bond with Shooty's Doctor. Having 2 Doctorless episodes in his first series was a bad idea, and it also needed a better enemy to launch the season.
Oh, interesting.
There's some interesting points there. People say, oh, the writing's bad on this, Chibnall era writing's bad. Again, that's really subjective. Rob says it took him ages to bond with Shooty's Doctor. It's not perhaps that the writing is bad per se. It just hasn't worked for him. And I really think most often it's as simple as that. There is some genuine bad writing in things sometimes, such as pointing at name signs. But do you know what I mean? It's not that it's bad per se. And I do think having 2 Doctorless episodes was a bad idea. And talking of 2 Doctor things, I also think having 14 in Chiswick not doing anything is stupid. I really don't like that.
I've just deleted that from my memory.
Yeah,
to be fair,
absolute nonsense.
I just don't buy it. I mean, Doctor Who's come out with some crazy things in the past. It always will, and it always will do.
Yes, and that's part of its thing.
Yeah, exactly. But you kind of take what you want. There is so much of it in the tapestry of Doctor Who that you can pull a few threads out or not see them, choose to not see them.
Yeah, that's it.
The Doctor's half human from the Paul McGann movie. No one's mentioned that ever again since. I think maybe there's been an attempt to sort of slyly reference it and write it off.
Yeah,
but, it's just a thing.
So, we had a few comments, quite a few from Drew here. 15 and Ruby were instant hits for me, though I didn't rate the Christmas special or Space Babies as more than average. The latter reminded me of Aliens of London, political and punchy, but also puerile and a little weak. The next 3 episodes I thought were amazing. As a Moffat fan, I love Boom. 73 Yards was ambitious and atmospheric. Rogue really showed the benefit of fresh voices. Dot and Bubble was, for the most part, really powerful satire. Devil's Cord was weaker, but Maestro was an amazing villain. Sadly, the finale was a rum old bag of bones. That's a great saying. And I was less than convinced. The way Legend moved between the Sue bits and the Ruby bits was awkward. Some scenes were bizarrely wasteful. Ruby's mum comes to unit only to be sent home again. The end was well built and tense, even though Sutekh looked very silly. The God of Death was presented as initially imposing and powerful. I didn't like much in Empire, and I found the convenient everyone comes back to life bit without any explanation. It was without any explanation. Others have mentioned the moment with Ruby's mum pointing at the sign as being a letdown, and I'd agree. I do hope that the snow and other elements might get further explanation, but I'm not holding my breath. I think that's good, Drew, because I don't know how long you can hold your breath for.
No.
I did enjoy Joy to the World after a couple of watches, and I'm looking forward to the new companion, but I hope Ruby doesn't just become another face at UNIT, and I'm a little concerned about the lack of a 3rd series announcement, but that will come in time.
Can I just add... you got more, Drew, to read out?
No, I've got another one here that I'd just like to chuck out very quickly. Mark
Go on, then.
from Mr. and Mrs. Who podcast
Hey!
On the whole, I thought the season was pretty dreadful. I enjoyed 3 eps, but the rest were some of the worst Who I've ever watched. The Doctor's essential quirkiness and eccentricity is nowhere to be seen. RTD isn't the great writer he thinks he is. Worst season ever.
Yikes! That's a bit of a
Stinging.
stinger, isn't it?
Yeah.
Good grief, that's rather strong. I'm just this is an interesting theme that's come up since Russell T took on the reins again. We had that great big thing of Unit Tower being a bit like Stark Tower.
Yeah.
It's just totally. I mean, and that's fine. I mean, Russell's a big comic fan, right? And he loves all that kind of stuff. And he's done it in Doctor Who previously. What was it? The Valiant, the big
like
airship
the
thing.
helicarrier.
It's kind of cool. Sort of nice to see in a while. But anyway, that beside the point. The thing is, it's like, why do Unit give the Doctor's companions jobs? And I think what it's done is it's kind of okay. So we had that brilliant moment towards the end of The Power of the Doctor, right? Jodie's final story, when we suddenly saw a room full of companions all kind of engaged in a sort of counselling or almost like, a therapy kind of thing. Let's get together. Let's talk about our shared experiences. Let's, talk about the good times and the bad times, almost as though they need some kind of reintegration into how to be normal again, how to live on Earth and do that ordinary life that we all have to do, which to me has a sort of, that feels quite a real thing.
Yeah.
Almost as though traveling with the Doctor, if you suddenly taken away from that, you would have some kind of post-traumatic stress disorder. The 13th Doctor said, I will take you back home, but you will be changed. You'll be a different person. And that, I think, has gone through the Russell T and Stephen Moffat years as well. And it kind of came to a head there. And we saw how, it was a sort of a healing process, that whole session. But in Russell T Davis's Doctor Who, the old companions are given a job at Unit.
Yeah.
6 figures, right? A brilliant pension, access to all the nation's secrets, cool tech. It's a very different style of Doctor Who. And I think part of the reason why so many of us are perhaps struggling, particularly for those who enjoyed Jodie's era, as much as we did, it's you've got that kind of movement away from something which is attempting to be a little more grounded and personal, perhaps, and more humanistic almost. I don't know if that's the right word, but something which tries to empathise with the human condition, the humanity, the feelings that we have. Jodie's Doctor was a great empathic Doctor. I think Shooty's Doctor is as well. But that aside, we've lost that with this kind of blanket treating of ex-companions as Unit personnel. Because, we had them, and I'm just sort of looking on some of my Blue Sky posts, right, from when I watched Series 1 again. We get Rose Noble back in, don't we? Now, she had a great time with the Tenant 2 Doctor, 14th Doctor. Right, we saw her. She got involved in the Star Beast adventure, and she reappeared in. She was there in the Giggle as well, I think, wasn't she?
Yeah.
And she's here again with Mel in those last 2
working
stories.
Unit.
She doesn't do anything.
No.
There is nothing for her to do other than, I don't even know if she shoots at Sutekh. I can't remember. To bring a great character into being, right, and then to just abandon them, it just. This is quite serious. Why have them in a show if they're not going to do anything? Now, okay, you could argue on the one hand, well, that's kind of what Doctor Who always used to do. Doctor Who of old, would quite often bring in a great series semi-regular and not do anything with them or struggle to find something for them to do almost. She does nothing. And, and again with Mel, much as I was delighted to see Bonnie Langford back in, reprising Melanie known as Mel. I love that. So it's like in brackets known as, you can call me Melanie. My name is Melanie, but I'm known as Mel. What? So, I don't know. It's a bit of a fun thing, but she didn't really do much either. She was in Susan Twist's Tech Corporation as a bit of undercover.
Yeah.
She didn't really do anything there.
No. It could have just
Mike Yates
been...
did a better job in Invasion of the Dinosaurs, when it actually had something to do with his character, he was sent in undercover and it changed him. It changed the way he think, or was that Green Death, rather. It changed him by Invasion of the Dinosaurs and the Planet of the Spiders. There's a nice little arc for him there, but that's a whole other thing. So, You know, for all that Russell T Davies, that era is all about sort of character development and, you know, little personal arcs, story arcs of various things. There was none of that really here. I don't think anybody had any kind of real art. There was so many caricatures, so many ciphers, so many redundant people, so many just wasted opportunities. Perhaps, you know, different creative choices, maybe, if I want to be really kind about it. But yeah, I must admit, for me, I mean, this series didn't land for me at all. You know, I kind of thought watching The Church on Ruby Road, which I sort of enjoyed. I don't think it was, you know, it wasn't very high concept or any of that sort of stuff, but it was a nice, like, fun, rompy Christmas episode.
That's all they need to
great.
Be, you know?
Yeah, exactly. But I thought, well, do you know what? Once they get in with the series, it's going to be even better than this. That was a reasonable benchmark to kind of springboard from. But I kind of felt actually out of the whole series one, maybe Space Babies was about as good as it got.
Really?
I don't know. Do you know? I mean, I Space Babies at least, right, was a kind of coherent story, right? It was morally messy, right? Because there's a whole thing there about just abandoning a whole bunch of newborns on a space station to fend for themselves in orbit with all the ravages of space around them and a monster, right? The bogey monster. I don't want to talk about that, so we'll move on. Maestro and the Devil's Cord. Now, I mean, I enjoyed that first time round. Second time round, I thought it was weak. I thought it was shallow as hell. You know, some nice moments, but so what was? And again, I'll just sort of going through them quickly. But boom, after that, high concept, like you said. You know, you've incapacitated the Doctor for pretty much the entire episode. So the challenge is, what do you do? And I think Stephen Moffat did a reasonably good job of it, raising the tension by having the other characters kind of, you know, sort of increase the stakes. But then it kind of gave way in the last 10 minutes to some kind of mawkish sentimentality that was, you know, I think one of the final lines was, bring on the fish fingers and custard, or fish fingers and custard for everyone. Okay, fine, it's a nice little in thing, but bleh. Then we got, I thought Dot and Bubble was really strong. I did enjoy 73 Yards. Even on a rewatch, I enjoyed 73 Yards. I probably enjoyed it more. I probably enjoyed Dot and Bubble more. But again, you know, Dot and Bubble was a tale of two halves. You know, what starts as a kind of comment on, I think somebody said it there in the comments, you know, what starts as a kind of sort of slightly satirical take on the Gen Z, you know, or what older people think of Gen Z as being sort of, you know, they can't even walk in a straight line without their phone telling them what to do, you know, that, but it's, I didn't really like that part of it. I think I enjoyed it better when it started tackling the racist element head on. You know, and just trying to, you know, and using the Doctor to kind of confront that. You know, whenever the Doctor's confronted racism in the past, the Doctor's always been white. Now the Doctor's black, and it's full on. You know, and I thought that was nicely done. But then, you know, that's not my voice. You know, I don't really have the you know the perception, the perspective on the world. I don't have that black perspective, so I can't really comment on how powerful or how strong that was to anybody else. It just seemed that way to me. And I do think there was an opportunity lost there to actually bring in a writer who did have that perspective. You know, so it's I think it's creative choices that would be made. I think after that I thought Rogue, which I enjoyed the first time around, I absolutely hated the second time around. I just thought this is awful. Because it relied, I didn't realise the first time, but it relies so much on something that happens behind off camera, right? When Ruby comes back. Right? We think she's been taken over by Childa and the Doctor thinks she's dead. But no, she had these superpowered earrings, which, okay, we'd seen them, but we didn't actually see her use them to engage her superpowers to knock out the Childa who imprisoned her and attacked her and she thought was a friend. And then for some reason she wanted to masquerade as one of them, thereby hoodwinking everybody. So, you know, that was annoying. And then we got that reaction from the Doctor when he asks Rogue, how long did the Childa live? And Rogue says, centuries. And the Doctor's like, good, that's a long time to make them suffer. The Doctor doesn't do that. You know, this is not the same Doctor we saw at the end of Dot and Bubble even, who was prepared to give the racists a chance. You know, this is not the Doctor who is never cruelly and always tries to be kind. This is back to that sort of vengeful Time Lord that we saw in Human Nature. You know,
remember,
and the Rachnos story. So
that's fine though. You know, when 13, you know, blows up a load of baddies who are trying to take her.
Oh, of course, that's awful. She's
awful.
She's held to a high account.
But 10,
because she's a woman.
And
mate,
10,
that's literally all it is.
Yeah, but 10 burning baby Rachnos, absolutely fine.
No, it's fine. He can get away with that. Yeah,
It's 'cause
he's a
troubled.
hero. He's
troubled.
Time Lord victorious.
Yeah.
You know, and but that, to be fair, is something within certain quarters of fandom. You know, most rational people can see across all of that. You know, and make decisions. And you know, in certain corners, you know, who like to. I'm not going to get into the politics, but you know, there is a political element to that for sure.
Yeah. Right.
You know,
I'll read some more comments here.
Go for it.
Duke of Alpha Centauri. Absolutely loved it. Shooty really captured the Doctor and took them for a whole new spin. I really want him to do several years so we get to see a strong development. Pertwee did a perfect length of stint. Phil from Inky says, I nearly gave up for good after Devil's Cord, and only the Moffat episodes and 72 Yards pulled it back. It feels like a show not being made for me. This is fine and I understand why, but the rest of the family, who are previous casual viewers, now have no interest at all. Michael Moslin says, not enough episodes to have him basically missing 2 of them. Terrible season opener and even worse finale. Ruby being special went nowhere. Interaction with her and the Doctor had no angst. I mean, that doesn't bother me. You know, them being friends is fine. In her leaving the TARDIS, I felt nothing. Not had a My Doctor moment. Basically a meh season. DW Fan 91 thought it was brilliant. 10 out of 10. The British Alien, sadly it wasn't my cup of tea. Richard T says, for me it just shows that loads of money doesn't mean you end up with a successful show. It had promise as a new take on the show. Ultimately the writing was lacking and some episodes should never have made it to screen. Too short to establish anything on anyone. A poor start. Review It Yourself podcast, loved it. They said an unmitigated disaster ratings wise. Overall boring as hell.
Did they say they loved it though?
No, they didn't. I was being sarcastic, yeah. And then Mike Pohl, one word answer to both questions, awful and desperate. And Marcus Bryan says, like a lot of recent Who, it had promised, but ultimately the writing lets it down. Style over substance, and on top of that, the Doctor was mostly absent for 2 stories. Had this been a season of 22 episodes, you could accept that, but with only 8, it wasn't good. And yes, I agree. I think missing for 2 wasn't brilliant.
I'm trying to think, actually. I'm just looking at my my Blue Sky. I think as I kind of wrapped up my rewatch of the season. Yeah, we had the whole Mrs. Flood thing as well, didn't we?
Yeah,
which might pay off.
Yeah.
And I must admit, you know, this for me, this series has been the one I've just, you know, it sounds awful. I'm trying to think of a positive. I've enjoyed moments out of it, but I really, really hope they abandon this. I don't know, this kind of wanton direction they seem to go in, because it's not working for me. I'll watch it anyway, but there's so much more great Doctor out of there. This is just not. I put here, Ncuti Gatwa has been a joy to watch, full of energy, life, heart, soul, and I do think he'll be a great Doctor. You know, provided that the writers remember the core values of the character. You know, never cruel or cowardly. That's the thing. You know, there's been moments in this series where the Doctor's run away. He ran away from Maestro, realising what he was up against. You know, he ran away from the bogey monster, and he sort of turned around and said, well, why did I do that? Because that was part of the psychology of the thing. But, you know, and the crying thing, I think the crying thing is like, again, we saw Jodie. She's a very compassionate Doctor, you know, someone who strove towards being compassionate and wanted to be more empathic with humans, you know, wanted to, you know, be everybody's friend. And I think we've got a continuation of that with the 15th Doctor. But it's kind of, I don't know, for me, it's sort of, I mean, I've seen some good cases for why the 15th Doctor does cry a lot, and I totally get those. You know, for me, I just think, you know, if you're going to show a human Doctor, let him do human things. You know, let him be human, or maybe follow that journey. You know, what does it mean to have a human Doctor? You know, the sort of thing that we kind of touched on in Human Nature. When the Doctor becomes human, he's enabled to make those big decisions. You know, the human version of Dr. Smith, Mr. Smith, Professor Smith, whatever he was, hated. He didn't want to be the Time Lord again. No. You know, I love that, because the Time Lord is a different kind of being to the small human. with our small kind of concerns and our flat Earth ground and what have you.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that, and that was clearly that was a Paul Cannell thing to I just think be a little bit more sophisticated. Again, if you're gonna mess around with magic realism and fairy tale and sort of children's kind of things, I love that. Doctor Who has always been a children's show, and there's no reason why it shouldn't be again. And it doesn't have to be dark and full of gravitas and death and everything like that. It can be fun, it can be light, it can be silly, it can be ridiculous, it can even be pantomime, as long as it's somehow engaging, or treats its audience with the intelligence that they have, whether they're 5 years old or 50 years old.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's a thing. And, to see what seemed to be, at least on the surface, as a viewer, and admittedly, we are fans, we are the most critical of viewers, we're going to, if things aren't delivered, we're not going to engage with it.
No.
I think that's the thing. And,
I've got high hopes for
does that make any sense?
Yes,
I don't know.
Yeah. Would you like to play Ian Banks' voice note?
Yeah, let's do that. Come on, let's see what Ian
up.
Banks, because Ian will love it, I'm sure.
Hello, chaps. It's Ian Banks here in Perth,
Hi, Ian.
Western Australia, talking about season 1/14/40. I really enjoyed it. Mostly, there were a couple of duds. Unfortunately, the season finale was one of them. But overall, I loved it. I thought that Shooty and Millie were fantastic. The stories were always interesting and kept my attention, even Space Babies. And generally, I thought it was a nice step forward into a new era of lovely looking Who. Not that it hasn't always been lovely, but you know what I mean. Lots of Disney money. Anyway, for Series 2, I'd like more of the same, particularly the consistent writing that we had around the middle of the season. I think that RTD2 has gotten off to a fairly shaky but steady start, and I think we can only get room for improvement. The ratings are pretty healthy. Joy to the World did very well for Disney from all accounts that base themselves on facts. And I'm really looking forward to season 2 and beyond. More Shooty, please. And I'd really love to get that Hitchhikers crossover where he teams up with Bang Bang. All right. See you later. Bye.
See you, Ian.
Well,
thank you.
Thank
you very much for that.
Ian.
So brilliant.
Yeah, I think that's a good one for us to finish on. We had our thoughts and feelings, but other people feel very differently, rightly so. And, that's great to hear that Ian, enjoyed it largely.
And he's
I
not
think,
alone. There's lots of people out. We've had lots of comments on, from various people.
Yeah.
Obviously
and
not
I'm
as many as
excited
we'd
for
like,
the
but-
future. Yeah. So,
Indeed,
Yes.
I am too, and I can't wait for season 2. I've got no idea where it's going to go.
no.
Maybe we'll get some payoff by Mrs. Flood. Maybe we won't. At the end of the day, it's all new Doctor Who, and bring it on.
Yes,
That's what I say.
Exactly. So, on that note, thank you for listening. Thank you, contributors. And we'll catch you next time on Who Corners Corner podcast.
That's all for now. Bye.
GTFN.